Welcome to the lesson on contract job setup. I'm currently at the JobMaster Pro main menu and I'm going to set up a contract job. So I'm going to go into Customers Center because before we can set up any job or proposal, estimate, etc., we need to have a customer set up. So review the lesson on entering and finding customers if you're not already comfortable doing so. I'm just going to type in a customer that I want to set up a job for. And with the customer displayed, I'm going to click on the Jobs button on the toolbar. Now the job setup window comes open, and this is where we enter a new job into the program. Now before I enter a new job, I'm going to quickly exit back out, and I'm going to show you about defaults, job defaults. So I'm going to click the options on the menu bar and click on Customer Defaults. And the Cobra Defaults opens up for me with the Customer tab open because this is the screen from which I access the defaults. So I'm going to click on the Jobs tab to access the defaults for the jobs. Now remember that each user on a network can control their own Cobra defaults, and the same is with the jobs. So if you want more control over your job numbering rather than using auto job numbering, you can set this auto job number flag off by taking a check mark out of there or putting one in if you want the auto job numbering on. If you do want to use auto job numbering, Cobra will then use the next job number field to indicate how you're doing your auto job numbering. The overhead percentage, as you're learning, all of our percentages are actually entered as decimals. So if you wanted to add an overhead percent to all of your jobs, you can enter that percentage here. Now overhead percentage is another markup to the job. So because all of our job costing is done on a cost plus basis, this is another markup that would be added to both the material and the labor section of the job. So once I have set some of these defaults, I can click my Save button at the bottom of the Cobra Defaults window, and that will save it for this particular user then. So I'm going to exit out of the Cobra Defaults window, and I'm going to click my Jobs button on the toolbar again to get back to the job setup, and now we're going to enter a contract job. So because I have the system on auto job numbering, Cobra has placed me in the job type field, but if your cursor is in the job number field, then you can enter your own job number up to 6 or rather 8 characters long, so you can use numbers, letters, a lot of different characters in your job numbers. The job type, as you've probably learned by reviewing the job type setup lesson, job types allow you to default a lot of the system. So if you set up a lot of commercial contract jobs, for example, you've already told it how to handle the contract job in the terms of some of the defaults that you're seeing on the screen here. Now you can either click on a job type and then click the select button at the bottom of the window, or you can just enter your job type on the fly on the job setup window. As I press enter, I'm brought down to the reference field, and the reference, whatever you type in the reference field, shows up on all the invoices for this customer's job. So if it's a PO number or some kind of a verbal commitment to the job, you can enter that in there. The geocode is also coming from the customer setup. So whatever geocode you have set up with the customer in the General tab is what shows up here. And the geocode is used primarily by the scheduling program, so that could be map coordinates or city names, whatever you want it to be. The customer location. If this customer has multiple locations and you set them up in the Locations tab on the Customer Center screen, they will be available in here. So if you do a lot of work like for school districts or builders or apartment managers, property managers, that kind of thing, then you can set up their locations in the Locations tab and then automatically they will show up in here. You can select a location from this lookup, and when you do, that location will appear in these two location fields. But I'm just going to allow Cobra to do its thing here. So when I'm brought down to the location field, notice the word same is in there. When I press enter and the word same is there, Cobra will automatically bring down the customer's address from above on the main customer center screen. Otherwise, if the location of the job is different, you can just type in where it is. And the job description. This is a description of what the job is going to be about. So you can use your default job descriptions if you've got those pre-built in this window. Or I'm going to exit out of this window. I'm just going to type in my job description. And just like with the job location, the job description does afford you 2 lines of 50 characters each. And both the job location and the job description print very distinctively on any invoices related to this particular job. I'm going to press enter and come down to the price codes field. Now the price codes work differently for different types of jobs. So if this is a contract job, which is what we're doing now, I can select C from the price codes drop down, or just type C in the field. Now what the C means is that we're going to override any material and labor setup markups, like in your price book or with your labor setups, with overall cost plus markups here. And that's what the C means. It's for cost plus whatever markups I enter in these 2 fields. So if a bid has been done on this job and you know that it was bid at cost plus, say, 15% on material and 20% on labor, you can enter those markup percentages in these 2 fields. And again, these will override any price book markups and labor setups, and mark up your material and labor according to these 2 markups. Now the other thing related to contract, not everybody deals with this, but if you do, you can set up the retainage percentage that the job is starting out with. So if the job is starting out with a 10% retainage, I enter it as 0.10, and then anytime you do a job, an invoice for this job, it will automatically track that 10% retained balance separately from the rest of your aging. Now, if I wanted to, I could go into these other tabs in the job setup window too, the job options and the job notes, to get at more options like who estimated the job, who sold it, even a specific truck inventory if you want the inventory to come out of a specific truck inventory. But what I'm going to do is click back into the job info, which is the main job setup. And you notice that at the lower left of this window, I have a check mark in the checkbox that says, after entering job info, go directly to the save button, which means I don't want to be bothered with these tabs all the time. I'll just access them as I need them. So I'm going to click the save button. Notice my job number was assigned for me now, and when I click the OK button, I'm brought back to the job menu at this point. And again, if you've reviewed the T&M job setup, you know that we printed a work order. We can access any of these other screens at this point. But I'm going to go directly to the job center, because with a contract job, we're assuming then that there's going to be a budget for this job. So I'm going to click into the budget calculator at the left portion of the job center screen, and I'm going to enter a budget for this job. Now what I'm going to enter in these first 2 fields are the cost budget for material and labor. So let's say that the material was calculated to be a $50,000 cost and labor at $75,000, and I'm just pressing enter here. These again are your costs, your estimated material and labor costs, and then the overall labor hours, which then comes up with an average labor rate per hour. And again, this is just an average. If you've been using Cobra for doing your bidding, all of this job setup is actually done for you. Your budgets are created and everything else. Direct, those are things like subcontract, permits, inspection fees, maybe truck rental. So I'm going to just put in a budget for that as well. When I press enter, Cobra adds up and tells me what my total budget is. And then in the total bid, this is what we won the job for. So I'm going to enter $200,000. So we anticipate making over $73,000, and these are our profit margins. I'm going to click on the Save Original Budget, or because that button is highlighted, I can just press enter on it as well. And then Cobra will save that budget as the permanent original budget for this job. Now, let's take this a step further. Let's go into the budget button on the toolbar. Because here we can take this original job budget and we can split it out into actual phases or section budgets. How we do that is we click on the setup button at the bottom of the screen where we access our budget setup window. Now if you've already set up your pages in Cobra, your pages are nothing more than your different phases or sections of a job. We use page numbers to denote these different sections. Then you can have access to them right in here. So what I did was, in the page button, I double-clicked on in the page field rather, I double-clicked in there to access this window. Otherwise, you can also access it through the blue binocular lookup. Either way, when I double-click on a budget line, I can bring it out to the main screen and then enter a separate budget just for this section, phase, division of the job. And I'm just pressing enter, and pressing enter on the save button as well will also perform the save function. So at this point you can see I have one section of the job built with its own budget as well. So this job can have many different pages, phases, whatever you want to call them. We call them pages, to denote the different sections of the job. And then what will happen is, as material and labor are posted to the different pages of the job, then not only will the overall job budget's costs fill in automatically, estimated hours versus actual hours and remaining hours are calculated for you not only on the overall job level, but on the page level as well. Now, once a job is set up in the system, you need to know how to find it. So what I'm going to do is exit out of all the screens and get back to the main Job Master Pro main menu. If you know what your job number is, you can go directly into the Job Center and you can type it in. So if there's paperwork turned back, you've got that right at your fingertips. Otherwise, there are many ways that you can find a job in here. You can come into any of these fields and start typing anything about that particular field. For example, I'm in the location field, so if I type in part of a location, I don't even have to type in the whole location. But once I type part of the location and I press F5, I will get a list of all the jobs that have that location. And then I can double click on it from the lookup screen. So use all of these fields and use your F5 lookups. These are the quickest ways to find them as you're working in the Job Center screen. We can also access the job in the Job Center. So I'm going to use my go-to, or rather the Customer Center. So I'm going to select Go to Customer Center from the Job Center screen, which brings up my customer, and I can click into the Jobs tab itself, and I can find open jobs and closed jobs right in here as well. So what we're doing is using colored dots. Red ones are for closed jobs, green ones are for open jobs. This is the one that we just set up. So if I double click on it, I'm taken right back to the Job Center. where I can then begin working on the job or just review any of its information. Now we're not going to get into the job posting process because I've got separate lessons on that. But as you begin posting material and labor and direct to this individual job, these actuals, work in progress numbers are being updated for you automatically. Plus these job indicators towards the bottom of the screen are being updated every time you do something in the job. So we're going to review this later in subsequent lessons. But at this point, I just wanted to get through the typical contract job setup. This ends the lesson on setting up a contract job.